Welcome back to section 1.6, where we're going to talk about conditionals. In looking at statements, we're moving on to understanding complex statements, and there are 4 types of complex statements: negations, conjunctions, disjunctions, and conditionals. We've looked at translating and recognizing the previous 3 types of complex statements, and in 1.6 we're moving on to the 4th part, conditionals. All right, the standard form for the conditional is the if-then statement. Typically, in a standard form, what comes first is the if clause, what follows is the then clause. The if clause has a name. The if clause has a name, and that's antecedent. The then clause has a name, and that's consequent. So in standard form, it's an if-then statement. The if clause, called the antecedent, the then clause, called the consequent. And we will be using those terms quite regularly. So what do we want to learn in section 1.6? We need to know how to recognize the logical structure of compound statements. For 1.6, specifically, we're looking at conditionals. In the previous 3 sections, we looked at negations, conjunctions, and disjunctions, and you learned to recognize their logical structure. Now we'll look at the logical structure of a conditional. Then we're going to go on to not only being able to recognize when it's a conditional, but to translate it into standard form. And you recall, standard form is if, then the clause, then the then clause. So you have if, antecedent, then consequent. That's standard form. And finally, we're going to look at the truth value of conditionals and review the truth values for the other types of complex statements. So let's take a look at conditionals. In standard form, you have if P, then Q, where P is a placeholder or representative of the antecedent, and Q is a placeholder or representative for the consequent. This is standard form. If P, then Q. Let's look at an example. If I am a mother, then I am the female. So what is the antecedent here? And remember, the antecedent is the if clause. All right, and why don't you take a crack at what is the consequent or the then clause? How did you do? The antecedent, I am a mother. The consequent, I am a female. Again, the if clause is the antecedent. The then clause is a consequent. Okay, hopefully so far this seems pretty straightforward, but section 1.6 can be very challenging. So I'm going to delve into why conditionals can make it a little bit crazy. So one of the challenges is that if you change the order of the antecedent consequent, you can change the truth value. So we want to be clear that the statement if P then Q does not equal if Q then P. Let me say that again. If P then Q does not equal if Q then P. Now this is different from our previous complex statements because, for example, I like apples and I like oranges. It doesn't affect the truth value to say I like oranges and I like apples. Those statements are straightforward and equivalent. I will go today or I will go tomorrow. I will go tomorrow or I will go today. You see, we don't have a big change in meaning or any resulting change in truth value. Unfortunately, conditionals are another animal altogether. Let me give you an example. If it is a ripe, healthy strawberry, then it is red. So our antecedent, it is a ripe, healthy strawberry. Our consequent, it is red. If you flip the consequent and the antecedent to if it is red, then it is a ripe, healthy strawberry, your truth value changes. What do I mean? Take a look. If it's a ripe, healthy strawberry, then it's red. True. If it's red, then it's a ripe, healthy strawberry. False. There are many red things that are not ripe, healthy strawberries. Some fire trucks, some nail polish, there are many red things. Okay, so you test it out. For the purposes of discussion, when we talk about mothers and females and fathers and males in this class, we are referring to biological motherhood and fatherhood and human beings, just to focus the conversation on that. And if we are referring to other things, it will be explicitly stated. So, if it's a mother, then it's a female. True. But when we flip the consequent and the antecedent, we change the truth value. If it's a female, then it's a mother. This is false. There are many females that are not mothers. And we've looked at the strawberry example. If it's a ripe, healthy strawberry, then it's red. True. If it's red, then it's a ripe, healthy typo strawberry. False. If it's a collared dog, then it's someone's pet. Or has been someone's pet at least. Yes, but if it's someone's pet, then it's a collared dog? Not necessarily. If it's a ripe Myers lemon, then it's yellow. Okay. If it's yellow, then it's a Myers lemon? No. In California, the lemons are smaller and look almost exactly... in Colombia, the lemons are smaller and look almost exactly like American limes. So you can see there's some conflict that's going to come up with this. The point that you need to be aware of is that if P then Q is not equal to if Q then P. In standard form, the antecedent comes first and consequence comes last. It is if P, then Q. Again, the standard form of a conditional, if P, then Q. Our example, if you are a mother, then you are a female. P, or the antecedent, is you are a mother. Q, the consequent, you are a female. If all conditionals were used only in standard form, then this section would end here. Unfortunately, they are not, and we are introduced to something called a hidden conditional. Hidden conditional. In everyday speech, not all conditional relations are stated as standard form conditionals. Let me say that again. In everyday speech, not all conditionals are stated in standard form. Hidden conditional, not stated in standard form. Some statements of conditional relations don't even employ the terms if and then, and we call these hidden conditionals, and you'll need to learn to recognize them. Why you need to recognize them is that in order to evaluate their truth or falsity, it needs to be in standard form. In order to evaluate the truth or falsity of a conditional statement, particularly a hidden conditional statement, it has to be in standard form. Conditionals are false in only one case, when the antecedent is true and the consequent is false. Let me say that again. Conditionals are false in only one case, when the antecedent is true and the consequent is false. In all other cases, they are true. Why this is important is because in order to evaluate the truth or falsity of a conditional, you must be able to identify the antecedent or if clause and the consequent or then clause. Because once you identify these two, then you can evaluate the truth value of the entire conditional. All right, let's take a look at some hidden conditionals. One is a female if one is a mother. Our conditional is hidden here. We don't clearly have an if, then the statement of an antecedent, a then, and the statement of the consequent. Here is another. One is a mother only if one is a female. Here is another hidden conditional. And hidden conditionals that contain this type of negation, again, change the entire relationship of the antecedent to the consequent and therefore the truth value. If one is not a female, one is not a mother. We don't have our then statement, and we also have these negations. So that's going to be a complex one. Another hidden conditional. All mothers are females. And another. One can't be a mother and not be a female. So these are just some examples of hidden conditionals. To assist you in recognizing and translating hidden conditionals, I am going to introduce you to something that could be your new best friend. And we call it LESS. And LESS stands for Logical Equivalence Sheet. Logical Equivalence Sheet. You can find this logical equivalence sheet on page 18 of the textbook. It is one of the very last pages in your study guide where you have it as a handout, though that format's not too good. It's also provided in the handouts section of Canvas. I suggest you keep a copy with you at all times when dealing with this course. So whether you're doing homeworks or practice exercises, quizzes, or exams, and particularly on quizzes and exams, you're going to need LESS, which is why I jokingly call him your new best friend. These are not all of the instances of possible hidden conditionals. It's just 22 of the most common, and it's hoped that perhaps working with this 22, you might become familiar with how to translate hidden conditionals. All right, so let's look at the steps for translating hidden conditionals. The first thing we have to do is recognize it as a hidden conditional. So you might want to become familiar with your new friend LESS, and he'll definitely help you with this. So you need to recognize them. Then write it out. Write it out exactly as you find it, whether it's in the homework, on the quiz, wherever it is. Once you recognize it as a hidden conditional, write it out exactly as it occurs. Then find it on LESS and make note of the number. Write the number on LESS that corresponds to the hidden conditional you've written out. Then you want to find the value of P and the value of Q. And remember, we're using P here to represent antecedent and Q to represent consequent. Once you have all that done, then you can write it out in standard form. And once we have it in standard form, we can evaluate the truth or falsity of it. So again, these are the steps, and you're going to need to do these over and over and over. And you may be thinking, I'm not doing those steps. That's too complicated. I'll get this. Trust me, you won't. So I'm trying to instill in you some practices that are going to help you survive the quizzes and exams, because this is a fundamentally needed skill. So start now. Recognize the hidden conditional, write it out, find it on LESS, make sure to write down the number, find the value of P, the value of Q, and then write it out in standard form. We're going to look at some examples, and then there will also be a second video practicing this skill. So let's take a look. Only real men eat quiche. All right, I'm going to need LESS because this is a hidden conditional. So you go ahead and find it on LESS. What does LESS have to say? All right, this hidden conditional most directly corresponds to number 16. Only real men eat quiche, only Q's are P's. And you see the wording has to match exactly. It has to match exactly. Only Q's or P's is different than P only if Q. This doesn't say only if, it says only. So you have to be very, very careful to find your match on LESS. Now we've written down the number, number 16, so we want to find the value for P. All right, we want to find the value for P. So you're going to have to be careful here. You don't want to make any mistakes. And the value for P is eat quiche. But our letter cannot equal words. It has to equal a statement. A statement. Your letters must equal statements. So we're not going to have P equals eat quiche. We're going to make it into a statement. And you can do this very simply by saying you eat quiche, I eat quiche, he eats quiche. However you want to do it is acceptable. And then we want to define Q. Be very careful. Q corresponds to real men. Again, we have to make it into a statement. We can't just say real men. So we're going to try, you are a real man. You could do I am a real man, he is a real man. Doesn't matter. Just make sure it is a statement. And then finally, you are going to put it in standard form. And remember, standard form is if P, then Q. If P, then Q. If you eat quiche, then you are a real man. So we have followed all the steps on translating hidden conditionals. And you'll need to learn to do this process. So start practicing early and practice often. Here are some samples that you could begin practicing this on. My advice is to make sure the wording matches exactly. So if it says suffices for, find suffices for unless. If you see here, number 3, not unless. 4, whenever there's, then there's. 5, only if. 6, all. 7, a necessary condition for. 8, not unless. 9, we have if not, then not. If not, then not. And then a necessary condition for in number 10. So you need to sensitize yourself to recognizing all of these and being able to translate them into standard form. And we need them in standard form so that we can evaluate the truth or falsity. Because remember, a conditional is only false in one case, when the antecedent's true and the consequence false. So if you get the order of the antecedent and consequent wrong, then your truth evaluation will be wrong. So be sure that you master this skill of translating hidden conditionals into standard form. So for this section, we want to know how to recognize logical structure of compound statements. So can you recognize a negation, a conjunction, a disjunction, and a conditional? Then we started translating conditionals into standard form. So you need to recognize them and be able to translate them. And then finally, know how to determine the truth value of compound statements. Remember, you're going to need to do all of these steps to deal with translating hidden conditionals. So here are some ones for you to practice, and you can follow along in the practice video to try some of these. And I suggest doing that practice video multiple times, as this is a really necessary skill to master. That's really foundational for all the rest of the course. And the exams and quizzes from now until the end of the semester will all have translating hidden conditional problems on them. All right, good luck, and don't hesitate to contact me.